The two new infantry commanders, Gorgo and Liu Che, are probably some of the most meta-changing infantry commanders I've ever seen, bringing a literal new form of damage factor, and then also making it so you can do more normal attacks in a single turn is just insane. These commanders are literally shifting the whole entire investment meta. So today, I'll be updating my legendary commander investment tier list, where I put every single commander in a nice simple tier list for you to follow that will tell you a rough idea of which commanders are good investments right now and which commanders are bad investments. So if you want to be able to get the most value for your gold heads, you need to stick around until the end. Now let's start off by discussing how will I rank all these commanders based on investment. And to do this, I will take into account a ton of things. One will be like, do they have any good debuffs? Are their debuffs strong? Do they have good amounts of stats? Do they have any passive skill slot debuffs? Are they synergizing well with a lot of commanders? For example, Cyrus works extremely well with a ton of commanders, where a Minamoto probably only works well with like one or two, so that's definitely going to make a major difference there. And then I'll look at, will these commanders be good in the future? Are they countering anything really well? Do they have something unique to them like Liu Che and Gorgo? Are they going to be commanders with really high damage factor, or is their damage factor very lackluster even for this current meta? So all of that will be taken into account as I try to decide which commanders are the best. And now that we know what this tier list is going to be based on, let's switch over to the tier list itself. Now here is the actual tier list, and I'm going to start off by explaining the tiers themselves. The must invest are the best of the best commanders. They are such good investments that pretty much every single player should get these commanders. Then you've got your good investments. They are super strong right now. Good second commanders if you're running 2 marches of that one troop. Good secondaries to a must invest, or an overall really powerful commander. The decent / niche investment is where most commanders in the game will sit. Their commanders are going to work really well in a 3-march situation. They may work really well in a 7-march murder ball specifically, or they may be a commander that if you unlock them, you're going for a really specific build that most players wouldn't go for. And then you got your bad investments. These are commanders that just really suck right now, and never ever are commanders that are like the worst of the worst in the game. For example, Charlemagne. We're going to start off the list though without Charlemagne. We're going to start off with Ethelflaed. And Ethelflaed, I'm going to put in, you could say she's a must invest because she's free, but in terms of her performance right now, she's like a niche investment. I mean, yes, she's free. Everyone's going to get her for free, but at the moment, she's not an absolutely amazing commander, and she's okay with a few select marches, but she's not absolutely game changing. We've then got Margaret and Barbara, and they're both fairly strong commanders. I mean, like, when we look at their kit, they're actually really strong. They got good trades, and recently they got a buff. So if you're looking to have a march that kind of sits in the back and just does damage, then they're going to be fairly decent. And since the main thing that they really struggled with was going in and out of that tower mode, and that cooldown has been reduced, they're going to have a much easier time escaping when bad situations come. So if you run Margaret and Barbara on the field, they're going to work well, but they're not going to be absolutely amazing, and they're a really good march if you're running like a farm account. Then Alexander the Great, I'm going to put in probably like a decent investment. I mean, he's okay in the early game. He is one of those commanders, if you're running 3 or so infantry marches, he's arguably good. But then again, he has low stats. He's not trading too well at the moment. And in the future, I don't think he's going to hold as much value. Attila, probably the same thing. He's a commander that is really good right now. But in the future, I don't really know where he's going to sit. Especially since he's mainly a rally commander or mainly a whale commander. If you're running Attila, you're probably a whale with like 3 to 4 cav marches. And he's got good counterattack and all that. He's a good city rally, but he's not game changing. Then we got Scipio Africanus. He's a must invest. I mean, he's literally probably one of, if not the best infantry commanders in the game at the moment. He's a really strong primary. He works really well with current meta infantry commanders, and he's able to pretty much do extremely well on the open field. Then we got Cao Cao. He's a bad investment. His relic is okay. He's giving himself a defense reduction though. I'm not a big fan. Then we got Sargon, and he has a major skill damage debuff, and due to that fact, the main thing in his kit is going to put him in that good investment category, because when we look at Sargon's kit, that skill damage debuff is the main thing, and if we go into a smite damage meta, he's going to lose a lot of effectiveness because he has a skill damage debuff, which smite damage commanders are not affected by. So if you put a skill damage debuff on the opponent, but you're running, let's say, 3 smite damage commanders, then you're looking at a commander whose debuff is way weaker than it should be. Then we got Pyrus. He's going to go in the decent or niche investment, probably the top of that category, purely because he is really good with Liu Che. From what I've seen, he's probably one of, if not the strongest commanders with him, because he's buffing normal attack like crazy. His relic buffs normal attack, if I'm not mistaken, and you can access him in the gold chest and daily special offer. So I'm a really big fan of Pyrus. If you want to get him in the early game from the daily special offer, I would say it's a completely justified decision. And if you want to get him from the gold chest as well, obviously that's not in your control, but if you do invest in him from those gold chests, that is also justified. I think that even taking him up in the early game with a few gold heads at the moment wouldn't even be a bad choice for most infantry mains. Then we got Chandragupta. He's probably just a niche investment. I mean, he's good for 3 to 4 cav marches. I'd almost say he's essential at 4 cav marches. Really good at 3 cav marches. He's got good debuffs. He's got good damage. I'll say he's just above Attila, and he's a fairly strong commander overall. Charles Martel is a bad investment. His relic is good, but himself missing damage factor. He's only got a shielding effect and not too amazing. Then I'm going to put CJ probably into that niche investment category. He's okay on the open field. He's not a very good investment though. He doesn't have too much going for him. And overall, I wouldn't say he's one of those best commanders. Boudica Prime is also going in good invest. A commander I used to put in must invest. She's really in there for the same reason as Saga. And the main thing in her kit is a massive skill damage debuff. And if we're looking at smite damage commanders, then her debuff won't be as valuable. Cleopatra is a never ever, and then Liu Che is just going straight in the must invest. I would say arguably at the moment, he is better than CPO Prime. He is almost the best commander in the whole entire game. Crazy 5-target AoE, crazy mechanics we've never ever seen that are really strong, and he's synergizing quite well with commanders like CPO, and he's giving players that chance to swap him out for the Guan Yu, which a lot of players have been saying is not trading nearly as good. Then we have, in my opinion, the best commander in the game at the moment, ZHUGE. I mean, ZHUGE is just insane still. He's beating every single commander in the game. He beats Liu Che by an absolutely landslide, which is an amazing thing because the meta is infantry at the moment. He's beating pretty much every single cav march if you put him with a Boudica, and he's working extremely well in the open field all round. So overall, I think that ZHUGE is probably the best commander in the game at the moment, and he definitely deserves that must invest category. Then we got Constantine, bad investment unless you're going for Sunset Canyon. Gilgamesh is lacking on the open field at the moment. I mean, he's got an okay health debuff, and an okay unique like heal block that makes you do damage debuff, but then again, still not very amazing. I'm going to put YSS also in bad investments. I think he's not that amazing. Then we have Zenobia. She's going to go in the decent / niche investment. She's good in Garrison, but then again, also still not that amazing. She's starting to fall out of the Garrison meta. I think that maybe after we fully see Gorgo in the game and how she's fully going to perform in the Garrison, we may actually see Zenobia fall down to this bad investment category with the rest of the not very good Garrison commanders. Then we've got our friend Zhang Yu. I'm going to put him into good investments. I'd say he's a good commander, but probably about to fall out of this tier. If we see that the infantry really destroy him, he may completely fall out of this tier within the next tier list. But at the moment, he is still a fairly decent investment, especially if you want to run 2, even 3 cav marchers. He's going to work extremely well. Then we've got Tarek. He is a rally infantry commander, but he's really good in the open field. And if you're running like 2 infantry marches, he's one of those commanders I would actually recommend picking up because he is that strong. So at the moment, he is still holding a lot of meta potential. I'm going to put Edward of Woodstock in never ever. He just has a way too slow rage cycle. His damage is not that amazing anymore compared to current commanders. His stats are okay, but overall, he's just not a really good investment and he's not going to trade well on the open field. Same thing can be said. The same thing can be said with El Cid, because El Cid is one of those commanders where it's like, you get him in the gold chest, he's not that amazing on the field, his relic is not that amazing, so he's probably just going to sit in that category literally forever. And then we've got Guan Yu, who's just going to go in the decent / niche investments. He's only good at this point if you're running 3 infantry marches. The only thing in his kit that's left being strong is that silence effect, and I don't think it's justifiable to pair him with CPO over Liu Che because of the silence. He's just not strong enough, his damage is just not there, his stats are just not there. So at the moment, he's just going to sit in that decent or niche investment. He's okay in the field right now, don't think he will be nearly as good in the future, and I can't recommend new players go and get Guan at the moment. It is just not a good choice. Then Frederick, never ever, just not good in the open field pretty much all around. Genghis Khan is a bad investment at the moment. I mean, his relic is okay, but overall he's not a very strong commander. Hannibal Barker, never ever. Then we got Harold. I'm putting him above Guan. I know that sounds insane, but I think Harold has more future potential. He works extremely well with pretty much any infantry commander in the game right now, whether it be Alex, whether it be Sargon, whether it be Tarek, CPO, Pakal, anyone. Harold is probably going to work very well with them, and he's going to get a fairly decent trade. So at the moment, I think he's got more meta potential and more future potential than Guan Yu, though this may change with new commanders coming to the game even later, and he may end up falling down to that decent or niche category. I'm then going to put Bertrand in the decent or niche. He's a decent rally, and he's a good open field commander, but he's not too amazing. Then I got YSG. He's not meta, but he's definitely strong, so I'll put him in that decent or niche category. When I get him in the early game, that's justifiable. His relic is fairly decent, and I found that my YSG especially is performing okay, but not too amazing. Next up, we got Artemisia. I think Artemisia is not really a great investment at the moment due to the fact that she's a really stuck commander in terms of she only works well with 2 commanders currently in the game, that being Boudica Prime and Minamoto. And with Minamoto not being meta anymore and Boudica Prime possibly falling out of the meta, I don't think that Boudica Artemisia is really going to be an amazing pair in the future. So at the moment, I'm only going to put her in that decent / niche investment. She is pretty good for Siege of Orleans KVK. She's fairly accessible, but other than that, she's not the most amazing commander. And overall, I would say she's sitting in that decent or niche investment. And the only time I'd recommend pulling her out is if you need a different secondary to your Boudica other than ZHUGE. So most players probably shouldn't be grabbing Artemisia at this point. Suleiman is just a never invest. Pakal, I'm going to put in the niche investment. He's really good for city popping with Harold, an okay rally, but overall he's not the most amazing commander. And if you get ignored on the open field and running a Pakal and Harold, you're probably only get 1-for-1 trade. So you're pretty much guaranteed a 1-for-1 trade with Pakal and Harold. But if you get super swarmed or you don't get hit at all, then you're not going to trade very well. I'm going to put Cyrus also in niche investments. He's a good archer commander at the moment. He's working well with a lot of other commanders, but in terms of current field performance, you're only really running him for debuffs. So overall, he's not the most amazing commander, but he's not too bad. Yeah, Ziska's a good garrison at the moment, so I'm going to put him in that niche category, pretty much where every garrison goes. Now, there is one exception to the garrison commanders all being in the niche, and that is Gorgo, because she works extremely well with Liu Che. Like, it's a very, very strong march, and it allows your CPO to be freed up from Liu Che and put elsewhere, so you can still benefit from having Liu Che on the field with Gorgo, who really only works with Liu Che, and then you could run your CPO with Saga, and you could run Aguan CPO still, and then you'll be able to run the Gorgo with Liu Che, and Gorgo performs the same as CPO with Liu Che. Obviously, CPO is still better because he has AoE, but Gorgo is really, really strong with Liu Che, so it allows you to still use that CPO elsewhere. I'm going to put Leonidas and probably the never ever at this point. Guan is not in the meta anymore, and Leonidas definitely is not carried by Guan anymore, so that's pretty much I do not pick up. I'm going to put Justin into the niche investments. He's a good commander on the rally, and he's a decent commander on the open field, but he's not absolute meta in the open field especially, so he's probably just going to sit in that niche investment. Honda's going to go in the good investments. He's a good secondary if you're missing a secondary to any commander, and most players will run him in game modes like Ark of Osiris and Champions of Olympia, which is where he really does excel. Then we've got a commander, Liu Che Bing. He's probably a good investment at the moment. I wouldn't say he's must invest. I said he was must invest last time. You guys convinced me otherwise, so at the moment I'm going to put Liu Che Bing in the good investment category. He's a strong cav commander, good for 2 cav marches, and overall he's probably one of the better commanders in the game, but he's definitely not the absolute meta. Nebuchadnezzar, I'm actually going to put in the decent or niche investment. Really, really good third archer march, really accessible commander. You can access him in the daily special off, you can access him in the legendary tavern and the mightiest governor, so he's a very, very easy commander to get gold heads for, and he works fairly decent on the open field. Then we got Joan Prime. She's going to go in must invest. She's probably one of, if not the best cavalry commander secondary in the whole entire game at the moment. Ishita's going to go in the never ever category, not very good. Jadwiga is probably going to go in just a niche. She's a good garrison, that's probably about it. So she's not amazing, but she's a good garrison. And then we've got Henry. I'm going to place Henry into that good investment category. I think that he's a strong commander at the moment. He works well in the open field. He's a really, really good second archer commander, and he's really, really, really strong with ZHUGE. So overall, I think Henry is a good investment. You're going to notice he's fairly tanky as well. So I do like my Henry, and I think he is performing quite well at the moment. Nevsky is going to go in the must invest category. He's probably the best cavalry commander in the game at the moment. I know last time I said Liu Che Bing was better. That's just completely wrong. So Nevsky, definitely a must-invest commander at the moment. I would say he's the strongest cav. Most cav mains will go for him as their first cavalry commander. Then we got Julius Caesar, who I'm going to place in the bad investments. I mean, he works okay with Liu Che Bing, he works okay with Zhang Yu, but he's definitely not one of the meta commanders, and he's definitely not one of the strongest secondaries is what I like to call them in the game at the moment. The current strongest secondary is probably Mehmed. I would say he's arguably better than Honda for most free-to-play low spenders. His relic is really, really strong and he's easy to access, so I would definitely be able to put him in that good investment category, and it would be very justifiable. Then I'm going to put Lu Bu into the never ever. He's just not a very good commander. I can't even access him anymore. Then I'm going to put Heracles into decent/niche investments. Not very good in the open field. He's a good garrison, works somewhat okay in Sunset Canyon. Other than that, though, I wouldn't really invest in him unless you're going for that garrison meta. Minamoto is going to go in good investments. You do have to pay for him, but he is a really, really strong commander in the fact that you can get him in the early game and use him all the way until the end game because his double relic is really, really nice. Mulan is a niche commander. We've seen that at this point running 7 DPS marches is probably better than running just 6 DPS marches with 1 buffing march because there is so much extra DPS and most of the buffing commanders are really falling behind. So I would actually arguably say that Mulan is a bad investment at this point since a commander like Trajan, who I'm just going to also put in bad investment, are not really working as well since the 7 DPS march is just way better than running 6 DPS plus 1 buffing march. Then you got Ragnar, who I'm going to throw in the bad investment with Attila because they're both in the bad investment for the same reason. They're only good as a city rally with Attila and that's it. They're not really that good other than that. They work okay on the open field with Attila, but then again, they're only going to work with Attila, so I can't justify putting him in the decent/niche investment. And the reason Attila is not in bad investment as well is because he does work somewhat with Nevsky and he does work with a few other cav commanders, so I don't mind putting him in the niche, but I can't justify putting Takeda or Ragnar in there as well. I'm also going to put Ramses into never ever. I know that sounds insane. Why did I move him down even more? It's because we are looking like we're going to enter a smite meta. That's really what it looks like at the moment. And Ramses, one of the things that's somewhat keeping him in the bad investments is really just because he has a skill damage taken reduction, like a really high skill damage taken reduction. And since that's probably going to be fairly obsolete once we see a smite damage meta, he's definitely almost useless at this point since his damage is not that amazing and his stats won't be that amazing if he loses that skill damage reduction. I'm going to put Richard into the bad investments. The only reason he's not in never ever is because at this point you can still use him to AoE barb farm if you get him in the really early game, and he is really, really strong in the really early game. Saladin is also going to go in the bad investments. Similar to the reason of why I moved down Ramses, Saladin also got moved out of niche Because if we go into a smite damage meta, one of the main things in Saladin's kit is the fact that he does have a skill damage taken reduction, a really, really large one, and it probably makes up the majority of his value. So if we see a smite damage meta, then Saladin will definitely fall out of the meta, and since there's already a ton of March speed reduction commanders, players won't even consider running the Saladin anymore. Flavius, also just a niche investment, is a good infantry commander, but overall he's not absolutely game-changing. Moctezuma, never ever. Thutmose is going the bad investment. He's okay on the open field, his relic is decent, but he's not very amazing. DIDO is a niche, she's just a good garrison. Minamoto, you need her expertise to get most of her value, and she's just not very strong, so she's the bad investment. Sundok is a never ever. Theodora is a never ever. Tamiris is a bad investment because for the same reason I moved down Sargon, they're both reliant on there being a lot of skill damage, and if we go into a smite meta, she definitely won't be as strong. William is going to go in the good investment. He's probably one of the best carries in the game at the moment. He's good for 2 marches, really, really good for 3 marches, almost essential at that point. He's got good debuffs and also a really nice buff to your mutable, plus he's got a decent AoE, so I think that's a good place for him. And finally, Wizard Tian is a never ever commander. So now here is the final order for the tier list, with ZHUGE being the best investment commander, and then Xiao Xiao being the worst investment commander that I organized. I didn't change the never evers because they are all literally never ever invest. So let's say you would have followed this whole entire tier list in order though, you would go from the best commander investments all the way down to the worst, and you would have set up your account in a really good way. So if you started with ZHUGE and you got all the must invest and then most of the good invest commanders, you would have a really, really strong account. Now that the tier list is over, I would just like to mention that there are a ton of commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, like almost 100 legendary commanders at this point, if not more. And it's really, really difficult to know at all times where every single commander is in the meta. So if you feel I gave a commander an unjustified position, let me know in the comments down below. I'm always happy to change my opinions. For example, when I placed Nevsky below Hao Bing, you guys really, really told me that was a stupid choice, and then I switched it. So now Hao Bing is below Nevsky in the investment tier list. So if you found that I gave a commander an unjustified position and you think that they deserve a better position or even a worse position, let me know in the comments down below. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.